So the South African economy grew by 1.2% for the second quarter. This is better than most economists expected. Stats SA released their gross domestic numbers today. For some reaction on this, let's speak to Business Unity South Africa's Bonang Mohale, who joins us now via Zoom. Mr. Mohale, thank you so much for making time. Your reaction to the numbers, a lot of economists thought that it could perform worse than this. Obviously, we want the economy to perform much better, but this is welcome.
In fact, we are so desperate for good news, my dear brother, we will take it because officially it takes us out of a recession, especially at the time that we are becoming world record breakers for all the wrong reasons. What with the highest inequality in the world, the highest unemployment rate, the highest SME failure rate in the world, and then lastly, even though we spend 10 times more on education than most African countries, we've got the poorest educational outcomes, as evidenced by a number of studies where our grade 4 learners cannot read with comprehension.
What is the impact of the GDP numbers on investment?
So, because the population is growing at the rate of about 1.6%, it means the economy must grow at least at the rate of 1.6% positive for us to stand still. But for us to address the stubbornly high levels of unemployment that then lead to increasing levels of poverty and increasing levels of inequality, we have to be growing at least 5% positive GDP growth, so that in 12 years, we can double the size of this economy. Because what we want, Clement, is economic growth so that we can talk about economic and wealth redistribution, not the redistribution of poverty. Where we are at the moment, it's actually a spot of bother because inequality is rising, racism is at an all-time high, black graduates are roaming the streets hopelessly, public education has collapsed, public health care continue to fail the poor and the vulnerable. Crucial infrastructure is laying absolutely barren and wasteless. And then lastly, of course, lawlessness has now become an epidemic.
Yeah, I want to quote what the ANC's Deputy Secretary General, Jessie Duarte, said earlier today during the ANC briefing. She said that, and I quote, "The South African economy must be supported by a brave and very courageous government." That's the ANC saying that to itself as a governing party, Mr. Mohale. Has it been courageous in rebuilding the economy? And if not, how can they be courageous? Where do they start?
In fact, far from it. We have seen a lily-livered approach to the things that needs to be done. For instance, we have been talking about state capture for more than 20 years. We talk about the 9 wasted years. So number one, they must take the top state capture miscreants to jail. Number two, they must reduce the government debt instead of being populist. Number three, they must reduce the public sector wage bill because 70% of what Edward Kitzvetter collects through the South African Revenue Service go to only 3 buckets. Number one, of course, goes to social security. Number 2, it goes to public sector wage bill. And then lastly, just servicing debt. Pre-COVID, we were borrowing at the rate of 2.1 billion a day, every day. Debt servicing costs were 20 billion. Our debt to GDP ratio, when you include government guarantees to the more than 740 state-owned enterprises and state-owned companies, is 110%. It's not the percentage in and of itself, but our inability to pay it and to service it. I think we also need to fix the SOEs and SOCs. We are absolutely emboldened by the fact that now Transnet has managed through the SIU to freeze the 4.2 billion that belong to people that have aided and abetted the state capture. And then lastly, of course, I think we need to ensure that this is a country of laws, not of men.